Hi Internet, I'm Marigold with Panic Possum Productions, and we're going to talk a little bit about Wild Talents, the superhero role-playing game set in a world gone mad, what it is, why it's cool, and why you might want to play it with you and your group. First, some background. Wild Talents is a gritty superhero RPG created by the team of Greg Stolze, Dennis Detweiler, Kenneth Haidt, and Shane Ivey, so an absolute Justice League of game devs. Wild Talents was a follow-up to a previous Supers game, Godlike, a World War II with Supers game that placed a big emphasis on verisimilitude and a grounded treatment of superhumans. Think Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan with heat vision instead of the Liberty against the Nazi war wheels. For Wild Talents, the limits put in place for the superhuman soldiers of Godlike were tossed in the trash, and the guiding ethos of the game became trust. Let me explain. Wild Talents, more so than any other superhero game I've ever had the pleasure of reading or playing, trusts players and GMs with all the tools in the toolbox, even demonstrating how to take the power creation system and make a character with such a potent control of nuclear fusion that they can shut off the sun with just the starting allotment of points. Wild Talents isn't just a game of potentially high-powered supers duking it out in ridiculous costumes, but a game about power, the consequences of that power, and how it bumps up against the world and our ideals. Wild Talents looks at superheroes who can change the course of mighty rivers with their bare hands and asks, how will they change the world? Whether they even want to or not. Now, before we keep going, if this sounds interesting to you or you think you'd like to see more from me, go ahead and like this video, maybe drop a comment down below, and who knows, subscribe to my channel and make sure you set it to see all future content. Now, on with the superhuman madness of Wild Talents. If venerable games like Mutants and Masterminds are out to capture the feel of classic Marvel and DC comics, Wild Talents aims for works like Miracle Man, Top 10, and the Wild Card series of novels, works that explore the fallout of the superhuman, super scientific, and fantastical. This is not to say you couldn't tell a rollicking Silver Age style romp. In fact, the game thrives on the kind of deep-rooted neuroses of characters like Superman in the 1960s, and your classic Marvel staple of conflicted weirdos gifted great power through fate or circumstance. Wild Talents cares a great deal about who your characters are as people, what drives them, what motivates them to throw themselves into danger. Every character has passions and loyalties, internal and external motivating factors respectively. An example of a passion ripped from the comics might be Booster Gold's drive to become famous, or Barry Allen wanting to be like his favorite childhood comic book hero. While loyalties could be something like All Might wanting to put an end to All for One, or Superman trying to keep his career at the Daily Planet going. Passions and loyalties aren't just lines of text on your character sheet. By actively pursuing things that support your motivations, you regain willpower, one of the game's meta-currencies that you can also think of as fuel for your superpowers. No willpower means that your powers become weaker as you're riddled with inner turmoil that throws you off your game. Having lots of willpower, however, means that you can push yourself further and harder than normal, shaking off negative effects, improving the results of a roll, and helping out allies, so really think about what you want your character's motivating factors to be, and don't be afraid to give yourself conflicting motivations. The best ones always do and make for great drama. The hero's struggle between his responsibility to the city or their obligation to a team or other organization butting up against their own personal wants and desires is a genre staple, and by having your character's passions and loyalty potentially be at odds with each other or another player character's motivations is a great way to bring that spice into the game. It's Peter Parker swinging off to stop Doc Ock and leaving his girlfriend of the week glaring across a restaurant table at an empty chair. It's Superman being madly in love with Lois Lane, yet being unable to reveal his secret identity to her. It's Daredevil's everything. Point being, there's very few superhero games that so effortlessly integrate your character's wants and desires into the mechanics of the game, helping facilitate roleplay and fueling big throwdowns all in one go. Wild Talents is a game of big, dramatic superheroes and villains, and all the messy gray in between proactively working to achieve their goals. Of course, like I said before, there's nothing at all stopping you from running a fantastic Silver Age style romp where clear-cut good guys wallop sinister bad guys and nothing really changes. It even presents tools to help make that framework sing within the rule. That's really part of the beauty of Wild Talents. Aside from the incredibly flexible rules of the one roll engine that it's built around, more on that later, the book includes excellent advice from Kenneth Haidt of Trail of Cthulhu and Night's Black Agents fame, among many other works, on how to construct a rich, lived-in superhero setting of your own. To summarize one of the best advice sections I've ever read, start from where you want to be with the setting, then work backwards to how and why things are the way they are. Are supers policed via a tyrannical government requiring registration or imprisonment, or worse? Then maybe at some point a few decades ago, a cape battle got out of hand and left some VIPs smoldering piles of ash on the floor. Do all superpowers come from an alien virus? Maybe it was first unleashed over the skies of New York shortly after World War II. On top of this advice, they present a handy 4-color metric to help you better define the tone and contents of your setting: red, blue, black, and gold, each on a scale of 1 to 5. Red represents the stability of history, how much superheroes are really able to affect the course of history. At Red 1, the superhuman presence has already or will inevitably radically alter what we would consider the history of the world, eventually making it an almost unrecognizable place. While at Red 5, history continues as is, only with the presence of the fantastic in the skies above, with even time travel simply creating predestination paradoxes if time travel is even possible at all. Blue represents all the wild and fantastical nonsense that can breathe flavor into a superhero setting. At Blue 1, the most fantastical you should probably expect to see is that Tim can fire off death rays from his pinky, while at Blue 5, expect to find a world stuffed with aliens, gizmos, magic, and monsters, all existing side by side. Black is the moral clarity of the world. At Black 1, things are messy, complicated, with good and evil being hard to answer questions, different ideals clashing against each other, and very few hands managing to stay clean. Black 5 is the flavor of classic Silver Age DC comics. Gold is the level of malleability of people, both super and non-super, and institutions. How much things can and will change on an individual level, even if they exist on a high-red world where the River of Time is a straight and fixed one. In a Gold 1 game, you're going to find superhumans in every walk of life with lives as complicated, messy, and shifting as yours or mine, and the public perception of them changing with it. In a Gold 5 game, if your character starts out as the beloved local hero of Cityburg, they're probably going to be the beloved hero of Cityburg until they die. This is not to say that every super is the exact same in a high gold world, but that their positions in it tend to stay static, much like the Cape and Tights characters published by Marvel and DC. While individual characters might undergo some changes in their lives, the big important details remain. Mutants will always be hated and feared, Batman will always be billionaire Bruce Wayne, and Doctor Doom will always be cool as hell. These 4 sliding scales help both the GM and the players keep things on tone, and give players a solid idea of what kind of characters to bring to the table. A great example of Cape media that you can map easily to the 4 colors is Invincible. Invincible is a high blue, low gold, mid red, and mid to low black setting. In the world of Invincible, really the world of Image Comics, but let's not digress, there's everything you'd expect of a classic superhero world. Magic, space aliens, super teams and outlandish outfits, subterranean monsters, the works. Characters are constantly evolving, leaving the super life or finding new places in the setting, and while the history of the world looks much like ours, with great effort things can and do eventually go wild. And much like the audience, Mark learns that the world is a much more complex place than punching Big Buster Bob and the schnoz and calling it a day. So now you might ask, which one of these 4 metrics is the gritty realism dial? Well, none of them. Realism is something external to any of the metrics, and ultimately comes down to how you and your group handle the concepts and ideas in play. A high blue game where alien invasions happen every other month can realistically reflect the absolute nightmare of what living in that world must be like, even with superpowered guardians sucker-punching Gleephlorp's Probotron 5000 out of the air. Or maybe it's actually pretty okay to live in that world, and people just sort of roll with it and life continues mostly like normal, with the only real explanation being, to paraphrase Ken Hite in the book, people act differently in a world with superpowers. Though, as a rule of thumb, Wild Talents lends itself towards a more gritty, serious tone than some other superhero games. In Wild Talents, by default, if that ever-loving blue-eyed thing takes a swing at Paste Pop Pete's head, there's a solid chance he's about to turn Pete's noggin into a fine red mist without even trying. It's part of why I offered up Invincible as a good example media. Things might be extremely fantastical, but consequences come with every action. A superpowered brawl might leave hundreds hurt or dead, and even more homeless or jobless, and everyone is playing to win. So, enough about the ideas behind the game. How do you actually play it? Well, with friends preferably, but how do you and your friends play it? We won't be diving too deep into the rules of the game, but here's the general idea of how things work. Wild Talents, like the game it's spun out of, uses the one-roll engine. Unlike other D10 dice pool games like Vampire the Requiem or its lesser-known cousin, The Masquerade, instead of looking for individual successes, you're looking for matching pairs. Most pools are made up of your standard stat plus skill to get however many dice you're going to be rolling. However, one thing to keep in mind is that in Wild Talents, and all other ORE games, you never roll more than 10 dice, even if your combined stat and skill comes up with more than that. Each die is purchased for a set number of points. So let's say Sarah rolls 7d10 and she comes up with 3 4s, a pair of 5s, and a 1 and a 3. The matching pairs will be read as 2x5 and 3x4, the first number being the number of matching pairs, or width, and the second number being the height, the value rolled on the dice. These two numbers matter a lot. Generally speaking, the width of the roll represents the speed at which you do something, and the height represents how well you actually do the thing. So between the two matching sets Sarah rolled, her 2x5 would take more time than the 3x4, but would have a slightly better end result. When you're inflicting violence on someone, the height of your set maps to a location on the target's body, and the width of the roll is the damage inflicted plus or minus any modifiers. Each limb plus the torso and head have a certain number of damage boxes, and when they're filled up, that character starts taking penalties, like a bum leg, a broken arm, or maybe they're bleeding out, all depending on what kind of damage they took. Damage comes in two flavors, shock and killing. Shock being applied first to a struck location, then killing. Shock is your standard blunt force trauma, getting punched, kicked, blasted by a moderate amount of kinetic energy, but generally speaking, injuries that can be walked off and treated with some painkillers and a good lie down. Killing damage is exactly what it sounds like. Blades, bullets, death rays, your bones being turned to radium, that sort of thing. This type of damage is potentially debilitating long-term and lethal if the name didn't give it away already. If a character's head fills up with killing damage, it's instant death, usually because someone ventilated your skull with a well-placed shot or opened up a black hole in your temporal lobe. Damage can of course be mitigated by armor, being super tough, or ideally just not being hit. In a contest against another character like a race, fight, or other such thing, the width of your roll determines who goes first or finishes a task. So a roll of 4x3 would happen before a roll of 2x8, but the 2x8 would be a better quality or more accurate. Also, in a contest, if two characters come up with the same width, but one player has a greater height, the difference between the two results turns into gobble dice. Gobble dice let you remove dice from a target's highest rolled set. So if, say, Latasha rolled a 3x5 while Rhonda got a 3x4, Latasha gets a single gobble die she can use to turn Rhonda's 3x4 into a 2x4, slowing down Rhonda's character in the process. But if Latasha had gotten a 3x6, she'd have gotten 2 gobble dice and would have been able to remove 2 dice from Rhonda's set, totally stopping whatever action she was trying to make. Rolls can be modified a number of different ways. The first, by spending base will and willpower points to give yourself a bonus die, though again, that is not the only thing you can do with base will and willpower. There are also special die called hard die and wiggle die, which can be purchased for your stats, skills, or powers at an increased cost. Hard die are dice that always count as a 10, so 2 hard die in something means that no matter what, you will always have at least a 2x10 to lean back on. However, hard die are inflexible. You will always do whatever it is they're attached to the best you possibly can when you use them. You'll always hit as hard as you can. You'll always jump as far as you can. You'll always fly as fast and straight as you can. And attacks with hard dice always aim for the head. Wiggle die are much more powerful and even more expensive. Basically, a wiggle die can be set to any height the player wants when you roll a dice pool with wiggle die in it. So wiggle die lets you functionally build whatever results you want. Have a result of 2x3 and 2 wiggle die? You can turn that 2x3 into a 4x3. Rolled a single 10 and really want this next action to count, suddenly you have a 3x10. And that's the basics of the one roll engine's mechanics. But this is a superhero game, and what's a superhero game without superpowers? In Wild Talents, powers are called miracles, which, while they don't strictly need to be of divine origin, is a handy term to describe something absolutely impossible for a regular person. Hitting a home run, while impressive, is not miraculous. Turning someone's bones into liquid magma, however, is. It's also a bit of a dick move. The first thing to know about powers is that every superpower has at least one source and a permission. Sources are the reason your characters can do extra normal things, from specialized training, extraterrestrial origin, or genetic mutation to who knows what else. These sources then have permissions attached to them. Permissions describe what kind of abilities your character can have. Two characters might both have the ET source, but one of them took the Gadgeteer permission, meaning all the cool things they can do come from alien gadgets they build, whereas the other took the Super permission, which lets them build whatever kind of powers or super skills they want. A character can also have as many sources as a player wants, and GM allows, and having multiple sources is a good way to keep your character in at least somewhat fighting shape when running into threats that either nullify or are immune to abilities derived from one source. There's also archetypes, think prepackaged bundles of sources and permissions and even weaknesses, though not every campaign uses archetypes, and GMs can also ban any archetypes or sources that don't fit with the campaign framework. Powers come in 2 types, hyper abilities and miracles. Hyper abilities are stats or skills that go beyond normal into superhuman. Super strength, enhanced senses, or super intelligence could all be expressed as, but not limited to, hyperstats, purchased as modifications to your regular stats and counted towards any dice pools using those stats and skills. Miracles are composed entirely of their own dice pools and constructed using qualities and capacities. Qualities define what your powers do. Capacities define the scope of what your powers affect. Does your power set things on fire? That's a quality. Do you need to touch what you want to burn, or can you just look at it and think very hard to make it combust? That's a capacity. There are 3 kinds of qualities: attacks, defense, and useful. Attack and defense are exactly what they sound like. A power with these qualities can be used to inflict damage on a target or used to protect yourself from an attack or otherwise avert damage. The useful quality means that the power can be used for literally anything else that makes sense. Heat vision is obviously a great attack power, but with the addition of defend and useful qualities, you could use it to vaporize incoming missiles or weld together broken metal. Flight, for example, is always a useful power, but unless you give it the attack or defense quality, it's only really able to get you from place to place. No fancy flying to dodge gunfire, and no trick attacks. Capacities are how your power qualities affect the world. Every quality has a capacity, which are mass, range, speed, touch, and self. Power qualities with a mass capacity affect an amount of mass outside the user, which is a somewhat obtuse way of saying the mass capacity is what you want for a power that is going to interact with anything that isn't you, be it attacking or defending or anything of the sort. Range is exactly what it says like on the tin, and lets your power target and affect things at a distance, so any sort of blasting or telekinetic power would benefit from this capacity. The speed quality is, again, exactly what it sounds like, meaning your power activates extremely fast, be it a quick draw laser blast or classic super speed. Touch means that you can affect things with your power, but require that you touch that thing, and self means your power only directly affects you. While every power quality is going to have a capacity, it doesn't just have to have one capacity. A character can fly can also have the mass and touch capacities, letting them grant the ability to fly to anyone they're touching, or the ability to project a defensive force field, also having the ranged capacity, letting them make a barrier at a greater distance or around other people or objects. From there, it's just calculating point cost for what you want your powers to do and how strong you want it to be. Like any dice pool, the more dice in it, the stronger the power. A heat vision power with 6 dice in it will naturally have greater range and hit harder than the exact same power with only 4 dice in it. However, you can also purchase extra ranks of, say, attack to let an offensive power hit harder. Or pick up the booster extra, which will let you increase a capacity of a power by a factor of 10 for each instance of the booster. Or pick up the no upward limit extra, which, at the cost of a willpower point, lets you double a capacity, and then keep doubling it for every willpower point spent. These extras stack. That's how you get characters who can, say, tow the moon around on a chain or create metric tons of anything out of nothing. And there you have it. That's everything you need to know about how Wild Talents functions under the hood, and with that info and a few sessions under your belt, you'll be able to take this and know basically how to play any other game that uses ORE, like Monsters and Other Childish Things, a horror comedy about kids and their monster companions, or Reign, a fantasy game that puts a huge focus on being the leaders of armies, cities, or even entire nations. In summary, Wild Talents is a crunchy, gritty superhero game that thrives on characters just as messy and complicated as any born from the pens of the greats, that dares challenge both players and GMs alike to really dig into the complications and implications that comes when a person walks the world with the might of an army. What happens in a world gone mad? This has been Marigold with Panicked Possum Productions, and thank you so very much for watching.